Hi everyone, it's me, Darlene. I just started recording a little bit ago and then I got interrupted by the phone, and it was Derrick. So now we have a better ending for this video. I spoke to him. Derrick broke his leg. I have a video about that. And then yesterday I recorded about his surgery, and it ended up being part one because I had to stop recording, do stuff, and I didn't know what the outcome was going to be. So go watch, you can watch the broken leg video, but for sure go watch part one of his surgery, so this video will make sense, because I'm not gonna go over everything I went over yesterday with the hassles that we had. It's mostly, and this one too, mostly a video about all the shit that can go wrong and just the irritating answers we get, or the way we're treated when we go to, hospitals or whatever, anything. I think customer service across the board sucks for the most part. So yesterday I left off with me not knowing, or I think maybe I had said that he is like going to surgery, but I wasn't sure if that just meant he was going to a building. I don't know if I recorded that part, but there was a point where I didn't know for sure if he just was moved over to that section and was still going to wait, or if they were actually taking him into surgery. He was in the ER, so I don't think they were just like, okay, we're taking you from the ER to surgery. I shouldn't make assumptions. And that's where I left off. And I think I told you guys in that video that I was going to be calling to find out where he is, and I wanted to know more about what happens after. Like how long I can expect to wait. I was so tired. So I did call, and I left my number. Okay, I'm trying to make sure I say things in the right order and the right way. I believe that's the time that I left my number, and somebody called me right back, and she said he was in surgery. He had been in surgery for a while, and at the time she said he should be out maybe around 6:30, which was an hour and a half longer. And she said, I will call you when he's brought into the recovery room. And it doesn't take them long to wake up, but then we like to keep them for a couple of hours, and then I'll let you know, and you can come anytime during the recovery, come and sit if you want, all that stuff. All right. So I'm good. We hang up, and doctor called me and told me that, and I'd never spoken to him. He just called me because I was his contact. So he wanted to talk to me. He knew I was his mother too. And he explained to me that, and he sounded very serious, the break was much more serious than they expected. So he broke the fibula, fractured the tibula. There was multiple other ankle bones that were damaged. Ligaments were damaged. Nerves were damaged. And he fixed all that to the best that he could. And he said he was very optimistic with the outcome. And the x-rays looked good after the fact. He's got screws or pins, whatever, a plate, the longest plate they make. So that's all. I don't know anything about plates. But he wanted to keep Derrick. It is so hot. Let me turn my fan on, even if it's noisy. And that fan does get very noisy. He said the reason he wanted to keep him is because there was so much going on, and the incision was very long, and he was afraid of swelling, and he wanted to make sure they could take care of pain, things like that. He told me that. He gave him lots of antibiotics in the leg, in the ligaments, the other shit that I talked about, the nerves, all kinds of things like that. And he explained to me, I don't know, some other things. And then he said, so as optimistic as I am, though, he says, I want you to know, though, that this the break, the damage that is done is going to be life-altering for him. Life-altering. I was so stunned. In one way, I was completely relieved that they would have him for a night. I don't know, he'd be with Skylar. Skylar is home. Skylar's 17 now. She's all grown up. And so I was comfortable that he had somebody there, but I was like, what if he's in big pain during the night or whatever? So I just kept saying to Skylar, anything that you think he's suffering at all or whatever, let me know. We'll get an ambulance. We'll get him to the hospital. So I was going to be glad that he was in the hospital. But then I also thought, what if this is more serious than the doctor's even saying, and he's just trying to say, we're just doing it for, pain control or whatever. What if his leg is really bad, And, because I never got to see his leg. It was always in a boot, and, and now they call it a splint. It looks like a cast to me, like an old-fashioned cast. He used the words life-altering. And then I said, well, at least it's not like, I say this because it could have been worse. A lot of people will just jump into a pool head first and they break their neck and they're paralyzed. Or, he jumped and he didn't realize how shallow it was because it had gone to the shallow end. So he did a cannonball, and when he put his legs out, he shattered that leg. And so I said to the doctor, I said, at least it's not like that, that he would have hurt his neck and be paralyzed and stuff. He goes, oh no, he goes, and I've seen that several times. He says, and it is very sad, somebody's 30, 40 years old and perfect health and, they're in a wheelchair. There was something else we talked about. Oh yeah, the whole issue that we went through yesterday with going to the ER and then being sent to another building and then having to come back. Derrick even took a shuttle. I followed, coming back, and because nobody understood why Derrick was walking into the ER saying, I'm scheduled for surgery. See, Derrick shouldn't have been using the word scheduled because it wasn't scheduled, but we had no clue. He was confused as to why he was going into the ER section. It's because he was admitted as an ER patient, and the surgery was just going to be done whenever it could be done. And the doctor said that he did have a surgery that lasted long, and he was afraid he wasn't going to be able to do it yesterday, and he wouldn't have been able to do it until August 26th. Derrick was already 9 days out from when he broke his leg to yesterday's surgery. The 26th would have been too long, and the doctor said, I was like, please, let us do the surgery. I don't care how late it is, and this and that. He says, because he can't have his leg healing in this condition, waiting for surgery. So he said that he had somebody from the ER who understood and knew all of this. He went over all of it. She was supposed to be there in the morning when we arrived, and she was going to be, taking control of this. Like, okay, they're here for this, and you're going to have a room at the ER until they can take you in for surgery and all that. But she called out sick. So that's why supposedly nobody knew what was going on. But he says he does that often as a loophole for the insurance. And I'm expecting lots of issues with insurance. They're going to say, what? I don't think that hospital, I don't know if it's a network or not. I don't even care at this point. Anyway, so he explained that to me, and he said, I'm sorry there was such a mix-up. And he seemed nice and genuine, but something wasn't sitting right with me. I was like, life-altering, and I really wish I would have had a definition as to what he, how he was using that word. To me, life-altering is something that is for life. You're going to be altered in a way, like a limp or something. While I was on the phone with him, and I was on my cell phone, and I didn't want to interrupt. I don't even know. I would end up losing both parties. I don't know how to do that shit, It's just, I have to wait till all that beeping stops. So it was beeping, and we ended up hanging up. I took a break. I was hot. I was drinking hot decaf. It was making me hot. I had just walked from Derrick's when I started recording, and it was hot out. And now I just made a couple of burgers for Joe, and I feel much better. I'm more refreshed. Oh, but I gotta shut that door. All right, I want to wrap this up, and we're getting to the part where it's starting to piss me off. I get off the phone with the doctor, and I looked. He called me at 6:50. We talked for 8 minutes, so 6:58. At 7:11, that's 13 minutes later, the nurse calls me and said she was trying to get in touch with me. She goes, "Are you on your way here to visit?" And I said, "No." She goes, "Good, because you need to be ready to be taking him home. He's been discharged." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" She said, "Yeah." She goes, "I tried calling you." She says, but I wasn't getting through. I don't know if she said it went right to voicemail or whatever. And I said, "Well, I heard a call coming in." She goes, "Yeah, that was me." She goes, "Just a few minutes ago." And I said, "Yeah, I was talking to the doctor." And she said, "Yeah, well, he's discharged." And I said, "But I was just talking to the doctor, and he's filling me in on how he wants him there overnight." And I tell her all of this stuff, that he's concerned about swelling and things. I'm like, what's happening? She says, "Oh, things like that happen all the time." She said he was just checked, and he's ready to go. Everything's good. And I said, she goes, "Can you be here in like 30 minutes? And I said, "Yeah, 30 to 45 minutes. And she said, "Okay." She said, "Just park at the ER and we will come out with him." She said, "I'll call you when we're coming out." And I said, "All right." Now I'm very confused, and and I've already let friends know that he's staying again overnight, friends and family, Skylar and Skylar's mother, everybody. And so I tell Joe, I said, "I'm going to get Derrick." And so I go, and the whole way I'm like, this makes no sense at all, life altering. And he wants to keep him to for observation. It's like, is this gonna fuck everything up? As I'm pulling into the ER parking, she said, "Just park out front, don't go into any lot, just park out front." I said, "Okay." So I pull up, and the phone rings, and it's the nurse. She goes, "Are you here?" I said, "Yes, just got here." And she goes, "Okay." She goes, "We're running a little bit behind." She says, "It'll be just a few more minutes." And I said, "That's fine. That's okay." But I asked her, I said, "I need to know this. Who discharged him?" And she said, "Derrick's doctor, the surgeon." And she told me his name. I said, "But that's not possible." She said, "Yes." I said, "But you told me he was discharged when you called me. So that means at that point he was already discharged." She said, "Yes." I said, "And when you were calling me and the phone was beeping while I was talking to the doctor, he was already discharged?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Why would that doctor be telling me he was admitted if he already discharged him?" I said, "That makes no sense to me." She goes, "Oh, let me look." Oh, she says, "No, it was his assistant." She said another word, not assistant, and I don't like that, because she told me it was his doctor. See, if you don't know, you should say, "I'm not sure. I don't know. Let me look." You don't say it was his doctor. I don't like that shit. She said, "Yeah." And I said, "But how come the doctor doesn't know?" She said, "Oh, well, he has to know because he has to sign off on it." I said, "But he just didn't know. When you called me, it was just minutes." So I was really starting to get very irritated by all this, because it made no sense to me. She started to say something like, "Well, when he hung up, he must have..." I said, "But you already knew he was discharged because you were calling me while I was talking to the doctor." She had really no good answer. So at this point, I thought, I'm going to have to tell Derrick the stuff they're telling me. Because now it wasn't just a matter of saying life-altering. And I was really thinking he's just maybe not using the right words. And maybe he just means it's temporary, like just a bump in the road, altering his life for a moment. Anyway, so Derrick comes, and we do all that other shit, and then he gets in the car, and then on the way home I start telling him this stuff about the life-altering, and then about the discharge, and but I know for a fact she ended up saying that he approved it. He approved it and okayed it. Then again, maybe she meant from, I think that's what I thought. Because now I'm talking to her like 8:09. I was at the ER lot now, so almost an hour had passed. And I think she said I know she said he approved it or he signed off on it. So I thought, well, maybe it's possible that he got in and they said, no, he's good to go. That's what my thinking was. He's okay, he's good to go, and he signed off on it. So, but I tell Derrick all this. And now Derrick is upset because he didn't get the life-altering message that I got, or the extra seriousness of bones that he didn't know were broken. And again, maybe nobody told him anything right up front, but he said, I will definitely be making calls tomorrow. And I said, you are more than welcome to say, Derrick knows me, and he knows if I say he used the words life-altering, that those are the words he used. I told him, I said, use those words. I said, because those are the words he used. I'm never going to see this surgeon again. And I was very curious. I said, I'm very curious if he's going to deny that he said that. Oh, no, I didn't say that kind of thing. I said, or if he's going to admit and maybe say it was the wrong words. I should have said this or whatever. So Derrick talks to me this morning and said he called and that the doctor would call him. He was in surgery and that he would call him later. And so when I was over at Derrick's, I went to pick up his meds and then I dropped them off and he said the doctor called. And he said, really wrong choice of words. Something like that I used. He said, I just meant it was going to be like a disruption. That's a good word to use. I don't know if he used that word, but he was trying to say that it was like a disruption. It was going to be a disruption in his life for a while. He said, but no, he said, you should heal good and all that. And then Derrick said, he asked him, and my mother also is very curious, and me too, as to why you discharged me. He said, what are you talking about? Derrick said, I was discharged. Somebody called my mother shortly after you hung up with her and said that I was discharged and that you signed off on that. And he said, I didn't. He said, I will be looking into that. He said, but it's because of the ER thing. So there's different sides, different players in the game. So he did end up saying, they can make that call. He said, but I didn't know you were discharged last night. So then I asked Derrick, the discharge papers, there must be something there. I don't know. I know there was a stack and they went through it with us, but I don't know if there was any papers. We were outside of the car. Derrick was sitting in the car. I was standing outside with the person who wheeled him out, flipping through that. So I didn't see signatures, but Derrick said, I don't even know where that is. And I said, maybe you have it on the back seat. He goes, maybe I put it in my backpack. I know that stack of paper was given to us, and I'm very curious to see it, to see what the signature was. But see, the nurse still was telling me he signed off on it. So see how things go? Yeah, I don't like that kind of shit. I just don't. And there are a lot of people who answer things that they don't know the answers to. They'll just say something because they feel like, they need to say something. That's the way things are. And now Derrick, he slept in his own bed last night. He was glad to be able to do that. He's got a shitload of meds to take. I don't like that. And I'm definitely going to be keeping track of him. Skylar's going to be watching him. She's here all week, and sometimes she goes to her mom's on the weekends. But she's got school and she works, and so she will be here, and we'll be taking good care of him tomorrow. I think I said I was going to do something else for him tomorrow. I can't remember what it is. Oh, I'm going to go get him a temporary handicap tag for his car. I got the paperwork for him, and I dropped it off when we went to his appointment. When we went to his scan. And so that all worked out. That person got that and took a picture of it, emailed it to him. Derrick doesn't have a working printer at his home. It's at the studio, so he's emailing it to me. I will print it. I will go tomorrow and pick up his handicap. But he doesn't want to drive for a while, like at least a week. I mean, he just doesn't want to do anything to damage anything. He's, he could fall. I mean, so it's not a good idea at this point. And I'm more than willing to do legwork for him. Skylar too. Joe, is the only one around. He can ask Joe. Joe will go do stuff for him too. And that's it. I am going to hang up now, and I'll keep you up to date on everything else. But I was very disappointed with all this stuff. And I know Derrick went to bed like uneasy, like what? And another thing I thought is there are people who like almost want to be seen as a miracle worker. Now, the doctor didn't tell Derrick what he told me. To me, he made it sound way more serious than we expected, and that it was like, wow, the surgery was like next to impossible. I, didn't know if I had a pin or a screw, I don't know, but something, he was attaching something, and I hope that holds, and then this and that, and we weren't expecting this and this and that. But, I'm happy with the results. It can be that some people like to make it sound awful, and then when it turns out good, I'll be like, oh, thank you so much. When maybe it wasn't all that awful. I mean, I'm not saying it's not bad, it's bad. I can tell by Derrick that, and there's proof of those broken things and stuff. And Derrick said now the whatever they give for pain that's in the leg or whatever is starting to wear off, and he's in pain, and it's not a joke. I mean, it's not like, oh, this is nothing. I mean, he went through a lot, but sometimes doctors want to make it sound like it was worse. Just people in general, like, oh, I fell and this and this and this and that, but I'm all better, like it's a miracle, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it happened that way. It was just a better story. There are people like that, and so it could be something like that. It can be just somebody who just chooses the wrong words. And then, of course, some people just answer whatever they think the person wants to hear. Like, oh, yeah, the doctor discharged him. I don't know. Okay, that's enough. I'm ready to edit and get this uploaded. Thank you so much for watching. Oh, yeah, I wanted to say it at the beginning of the video. GoFundMe is still up. So I'll have the link to Derrick's GoFundMe if you want to go just check it out, or if you would like to make a very even tiny donation. He's not going to be working for a bit. He cannot go up his the stairs to his studio, and he knows that now because he did it once with me. And scooting up the stairs on his butt, and then scooting around the landing, and then scooting up this way, that wasn't as bad as when he got to the top and had to try to stand. And I was like, he's gonna fucking fall back and break his back. I mean, it was the scariest thing. And I was behind him, and I'm like, I can't stop this fall. If he falls on me, we're both going down. And LaShawn was behind us. And he knows that. He said, yeah, I'm not going to be able to do that. And even if he scoots on the floor further away, there's at some point he has to be able to try to stand up. And he can't be doing that with that leg at this point. Okay. Yeah, so GoFundMe. You can go check that out. I'll also have the link to my eBay, because you always can go check that out. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back with more soon. Bye.